Everyone, and welcome. This is a webinar on how installing an electrical vehicle charger can help your tourism business. My name is Craig Foley, and I'm the CEO of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, and I will be moderating today's session. We want to respectfully acknowledge the province of Newfoundland and Labrador as the ancestral homelands of many diverse populations of Indigenous people who have contributed to 9,000 years of history, including the Beothuk on the island of Newfoundland. Today, this province is home to diverse populations of Indigenous and other people. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. You've found the chat window, which seems to be enabled now, which is great. Question period will be at the end, and we will use the question and answer box. But we do have some team members who are going to be monitoring that as we go along. Now, let's get started. I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. John Poole is an electrification specialist with Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. In his role, he supports the identification, evaluation, and implementation of electrification initiatives in the province and plays a key role in the electrification of Hydro's fleet vehicles. He also lends his expertise and technical experience to support the design of conversion and demand management programs. John holds a diploma in energy systems engineering from St. Lawrence College. He has over 14 years of experience working in the energy efficiency field, first as a consultant supporting clients from various sectors across Canada, and then at Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, where he has held various roles. Grant Outerbridge is the manager of electrification and energy optimization at Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. Grant and his team are committed to working with customers to find energy efficiency solutions, including the electrification of transportation and space heating as our province transitions towards a greener future. Grant is a chartered professional accountant and has worked with electric and natural gas utilities for the past 11 years. Grant, do you have any opening comments?
No, just wanted to say thanks, Craig, for the intro and that we're really excited to be here and excited to talk to everyone about the benefits of EV charging. John's going to walk us through the presentation here today and do most of the heavy lifting, which is great for me. And I'll be here to kind of organize questions and put those to John. So do encourage folks to use the chat box, any and all questions. We're here to help you, and I'll pass it over to John from here.
All right, thanks, Grant. And hi, folks. It's a great pleasure to be in front of you to talk about many things EV, but especially how a new EV charger program, funding program, can help you folks specifically. And really, we geared this presentation very specific for the hospitality sector. So we hope we appreciate it. At the same time, a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. So again, very much designed this webinar. Probably some slides might be a little bit heavier in writing than ideal for PowerPoint, but it's so you can go back and use it as a reference source if you have questions after this, or if, say, you wanted to share or point people to this webinar, the recorded version after the fact. So I'm just waiting for the slide to change here. There we go. All right, so just an overview of what's in this webinar. Again, it's give you a sense of the trends and the current state of the EV market. Again, as mentioned, benefits and opportunities specific to the hospitality industry. And then also, I guess, rubber meets the road as far as, what do you need to know to even look at installing an EV charger, considerations for hospitality sites when planning for an EV charger install. And then we'll get into the funding program that we have to help you folks install EV chargers at your site. So just to take you back to where this all started. So essentially, as of like in 2020, there was no EV fast charger network in this province. And the EV fast charger network is probably something you've seen along the Trans-Canada Highway at either in Irving or other establishments. There are ChargePoint chargers branded with Hydro and provincial and federal government branding. So we went from 0 fast chargers to, in 2021, Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, with funding support from the provincial government and the government of Canada, commissioned the very first EV fast charging network in our province. And the importance of that is that it's somewhat of a chicken and egg scenario. You have people saying, well, why would you bother putting in a fast charging network? There's no EVs in the province, or there's hardly any EVs to make it worthwhile. Well, it's one of those chicken and egg. If someone didn't take leadership and basically say someone needs to take the first step and make this happen, we'd always be in that situation, and we'd be nowhere close to the EV adoption that we're at right now, and we're gaining momentum as well, even compared to other jurisdictions in Canada. A recent report was released where it's showing Newfoundland and Labrador is actually ahead of some other provinces, even provinces you wouldn't suspect that we would be ahead of as far as gaining momentum. So it's good to see. It means what we're doing is working. So basically in 2021, we installed 14 sites along the Trans-Canada Highway, all the way from St. John's to Port aux Basques, and one up there in Rocky Harbor. The fast charging network is not intended to be your 100% solution for charging. It's really meant for folks that are traveling long distances, and it's just to make road trips fast and efficient. And this was only the start of the network. We can call it phase 1 or the first 14 or whatnot. We continue to build out the program, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So just to give you an idea of the level of adoption and the impact it's having on our province, is you'll see there is, I have a bar graph there, and that's a graph that we sourced directly from our fast charger network, the first 14 that I just showed you. You can see what it looked like last summer, and again, in all fairness, a lot of stations were just commissioned and whatnot, but really what we saw is the word really got out that Newfoundland and Labrador now has a fast charging network and is in a position to allow EVs to travel the province. I personally can attest to the word getting out. I was getting calls that ended up being routed to me just randomly. A person was from British Columbia, and they're talking about driving out, saying they've always wanted to visit Newfoundland, but now that we finally have EV chargers, they're going to make the trip. And I was a little surprised at the amount of people from BC that's, as all of us know, that's a long drive. But EV drivers, they're very proud of how cheap it is to drive an electric vehicle, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's really a unique thing that is really, I guess, it's a bright spot in the tourism industry, where it's so cheap to drive that you're seeing people that would not have visited our province before starting to make plans to visit or visiting it. So I call that incremental tourism, basically tourism we would not have seen otherwise that we're now seeing due to the EV chargers. So if you'll note in the graph, you'll see in July of this past summer, there was almost just shy of 1,500 charging sessions. So that's again, in 1 month, in the month of July, 1,500 charging sessions, and that's just on those first 14 chargers that along the Trans-Canada. That comprises of visitors to our province driving EVs, but also staycationers, or what we call staycationers now. At the end of the day, those are people moving around our province, and the sharp uptick in the province tells you that is likely tourism related. Those are people going on holidays, whether they're local or visiting, and it's a strong indication that that the word is out that Newfoundland and Labrador is ready for EVs. Naturally, there's still more work to be done, and we're working on that. the word's out, and that's what this presentation is for, is to help you folks get ready to really capture that opportunity that's before you right now, to drive what I'll say is incremental business, and at some point, I guess, protect you from erosion of business as maybe some EV drivers go to other sites that have installed EV charging. This is just give you a sense also that this trend that we're seeing, so that was a graph of the trend that we saw locally just in our province of actual data showing how people were driving around our province this summer. This is to show you what's, I guess, the trend that's occurring across Canada. So it says actual BEV sales, and just so you know, EV stands for electric vehicle. BEV stands for battery electric vehicle. That's a 100% battery electric vehicle. As we know, there's also PHEVs. Those are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and basically all plug-in hybrid electric vehicles is just that they have a mix of, they can either use battery as in an all-electric mode, or they can switch to gas. Again, they have very limited electric driving range, but some people have been purchasing them as we'll say a gateway into driving an electric vehicle, many of which we hear from plug-in hybrid electric vehicle drivers that they kind of wish they just went all BEV because they realized how easy it was. But again, it was just concerns that they had that they realized probably weren't as grounded as they realized. So basically, the rate of EV adoption, you can see, was fairly flat rate of adoption. And then you're really starting to see it start tick up in the rate of adoption 2020, 2021. And from StatsCan, just pulled this before this presentation, is at the end of Q2, they're now showing we're above 5% of all new vehicle sales in Canada are actually being fully electric vehicles. And that we expect it to keep growing. Also, just for context, is that the government of Canada has stated that the following targets, basically 2026, they're targeting all, or in 2026, 10% of all new vehicle sales in Canada will be all electric. And so just imagine like what that's going to do. So we're around 5%, and we saw such a large activity of EV tourism in our province, even at 5%. And in 2026, they're targeting 10%. It may even exceed that. In 2030, they're targeting 60%. And in 2035, they're targeting 100% of all new vehicle sales in Canada being fully electric vehicles. Now, you can debate whether we'll hit those, but at the end of the day, the trends are pointing in that direction. So, whether that happens a year, later or earlier or whatnot, it's just to impress upon you, EVs are not going anywhere. It's just going to ramp up. So we're trying to help you take advantage of the opportunity. The other thing I wanted to give you just some context on, and again, this kind of relates to, the calls I get from EV drivers in BC that they're planning to visit our province for the first time. What's really driving that is one of the reasons local and visitor tourism increases with EVs is basically how little it costs to drive them. And I wanted to give you an example. And again, just use our province here, driving from St. John's all the way to St. Anthony. It's a fair drive. And what I did is I just used a Hyundai Kona, and I use Hyundai Konas because the Kona has almost an identical version of a gas vehicle and an electric vehicle. So basically, I just crunched the numbers that driving a gas-powered Hyundai Kona, which I will argue is likely a very efficient gas vehicle, more efficient than some of the gas vehicles on the road today. That costs about $133 one way to drive to St. Anthony in gas. To do that in an EV, including fast charging costs and whatnot, it works out to about $36 driving a Hyundai Kona EV. So right there, that's about a quarter of the cost to make trips like that. I can attest to, I'm not an EV driver yet, but we are electrifying our fleet. And when I travel for work, I'm driving an EV. I enjoy it. It's hard for me to go back to my personal gas vehicle afterwards. I'm, likely going to be an EV driver sooner than later, just because they're a pleasure to drive. But again, at the end of my EV trips, when I realized like how little it costs, like I was up in Rocky Harbor the other weekend, it's just more pleasurable to explore a province in an electric vehicle, because it's not taking a lot of money to go explore down a peninsula, go to the far-flung corners of our province, and really explore places that you otherwise wouldn't, because gas is very dear and expensive. So it's just added context as to why you're starting to see more EV drivers exploring even areas where they don't even have EV chargers yet. And that's where you folks come in, is that just by you folks installing EV chargers can really bring a lot of extra business to not only your own establishment, but also your community. You play a very big role in your community as well to bring that those EV drivers down. So as I mentioned earlier, after I mentioned the first 14 fast chargers along the highway, I mentioned that we're also working to expand it. So we're working in partnership with Newfoundland Power and Hydro under Take Charge. You're likely very familiar with the Take Charge brand. And again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to cover as much geographic area that makes sense for fast chargers. And again, I encourage people not to get too hung up on my community doesn't have a fast charger, so people can't get here. EVs do have a very good range. Not every community needs a fast charger. It's really meant for getting to point A to point B. If they have a destination charger, like a charger at a hotel, that it eliminates the need for a fast charger in a community that's at the end of a day where they'd be stopping to stay anyways. So I encourage folks not to get too hung up on whether they have a fast charger in the community or not, because it's really not required. We study the map, and we try to strategically put fast chargers where they're really required. So I just want to give you a taste of, or a perspective, I guess, that unless you're an EV driver, you don't necessarily see this perspective. This is, I guess, a view into the EV driver world. When they're planning their trip, whether it's a local person or it's a visitor from out of province, they're going on sites like this. Like PlugShare is just one of many sites, but it is a very popular public site. It's a free platform. And essentially what they're doing is they're planning their trips based on where they can find charging, and especially charging where they can stay overnight and charge. At the end of the day, they'll visit a website like PlugShare. They'll, as you see highlighted there with the arrow, they'll put on a filter that says hotel or lodging with EV charging, or they'll go to dining if it's a restaurant they're looking for with charging. But at the end of the day, let's focus on the hotel lodging sector for now, is that you can see that there's green dots that show up all over Newfoundland. But really, when you start zooming in, you'll notice that there's really not many chargers in our province, destination chargers, accommodations and whatnot. If you zoom in on the St. John's, I think it shows 3 at the moment. Again, there may be, and again, let's be clear that I'm just focusing on the destination chargers, the level 2 destination chargers, which I'll explain a little bit more later in this presentation. But they're the cheaper, the less expensive, more cost-effective chargers, and somewhat similar in nature to what EV chargers people are installing in their own homes. But at the end of the day, what I did as an example is I zoomed in on Gander. And Gander's an area very familiar with, because I end up going there for driving our electric EV for business, for conferences and whatnot. So an EV driver, they're planning the trip, they zoom in on Gander, they see one location that has what we call the destination level 2 charger. Now think of how many hotels, motels are in Gander, so concentrated, especially along the Trans-Canada Highway. Those folks looking, it's as far as they're concerned with trying to plan the trip, they don't even exist they're not even shown because they don't have EV charger. And again, they're trying to plan their trip to maximize the amount of charging they do at their stops where they're naturally going to be there for a while. So again, it just gives you an idea of what EV drivers are seeing in our province as they try to plan their trips. And again, I also don't want, I know we mentioned this is largely tourism related, but also remember, like, at the end of the day, the nice thing about the EVs is that a lot of organizations in our province businesses are electrifying their fleets. So the opportunity there is that's an opportunity to round out, I guess we'll say, your income or your guest stays or your business all year round. So we all know there's a big surge in summertime, but again, there's a real trend of electrification of business fleets in this province, that those folks are also going to be looking for hotels, motels with lodging sites with EV chargers. Again, I can speak to my own experience that when I'm in the EV, even if it's a hotel motel I haven't stayed at before, everyone kind of has their go-to that they ended up, either you get the corporate rate or whatnot. But we're starting to tell our travel agencies and whatnot is that if you can, and if it's reasonable or comparable, please book us in a hotel with an EV charger, because if we can skip a fast charging session on the side of the highway, we'd much rather skip that one session at the very end of our day and then just pull into the hotel we're staying at, plug in, and the EV's all ready for us, fully charged in the morning. So again, just going back to, continuing on the benefits of the hospitality to the hospitality industry, is that you also get quite a bit of increased exposure and profile. At the end of the day, if some of you haven't been on it yet, I strongly encourage you to join Drive Electric NL Facebook page. You'll see a lot of tourists from out of province asking, what hotels are in the area, or suggested hotels in the area with EV charging. People will be talking about great experiences they had at a hotel. Like, they're so happy to find one with an EV charger. They post it, and look at the interaction that they're getting. One of the posts on the left here is an example. This is at Eddie's Restaurant along the Trans-Canada Highway. Again, this was one of our host sites for the fast charger network, but it still carries over. Is that someone posting about how they had they stopped into Eddie's. There was there's several Teslas from Quebec there waiting to charge. They're eating breakfast because folks that are charging, they're looking to do something to fill their time. And at the end of the day, they're just saying, what a great help to NL tourism at the end of the day. And then you see the engagement there, 10 comments, 54 likes and all that. And I was, as I was researching for this, I was reading some of the comments, and it even has the effect on me, because they're like, oh, you got to try the club sandwich at Eddie's. It's awesome. And I was like, okay, I don't think I would have ever tried this club sandwich at Eddie's, but I am going to now, because, if you see that those recommendations and suggestions, everyone wants to see the peer reviews of, oh, you got to try this at this location. And you get that sort of that exposure and profile on the social media sites that are very excited about hotels and motels that install EV chargers. So basically, I just want to run you through what different chargers look like. Just give you a just very high level context as to what the different classifications of chargers are. So some folks they refer to them as levels of chargers. So level 1 is essentially, and I'm sure because I've spoken with many folks in the hospitality industry as we run this program, folks that may have experienced someone just saying, do you have a 115 volt, 120 volt outlet on the outside of your building that I can plug into to help? And level 1 charging is exactly that. It's basically, typically it's a charger that comes with the car, runs on 120 volt. You can plug it into your standard electrical outlet, just whatever you see on the outside of your facility. And it typically charges at a rate that adds about 5 kilometers per hour. So just to give you some context, you're maybe talking about if someone's rolling in there into your establishment with a very low state of charge electric vehicle, that's maybe a 2-day charge. So it's fine. It works fine for people, we'll say, in their own homes until they get an actual level 2 charger installed at their own home. Especially if you're driving less than, we'll say, 60 to 80 kilometers a day, that can work. But it's not a solution, a long-term solution. Level 2 charging is what essentially we're really focusing on for this presentation. But the program is not limited to just level 2, is that these are kind of in the sweet spot as far as cost and performance for charging. So they'll add about 40 kilometers an hour of range to an electric vehicle as they're connected to it. I'll also touch base when people talk about level 3 or DCFC. DCFC stands for direct current fast charging. The DCFC chargers are the ones that I mentioned that we've installed along the highway. You can get about 100 kilometers of range in about 20 minutes from those chargers. And as we expand the network and hopefully, down the road, install even faster chargers, those charge times at the DCFC level 3 sites will come down even further to potentially half or less, to be getting almost 200 kilometers in like a 15-minute charge or whatnot. It's really a game changer as well. And just to give you, I'll give you context later on when I start talking about the program, but a level 2 charger here, from cost wise, just to purchase it, can range anywhere from 600. Again, I'm talking about smart chargers here, 600 to $4,000. That's just the cost to purchase the charger. Level 3 chargers, they can be starting around $30,000 or more, depending. Again, it all depends on the power you choose for them. And again, they have quite a substantial installation cost because they need dedicated concrete pad. The high-powered ones do, and whatnot. The mid-powered ones, which I'll get into later, are a little bit easier on the budget for the installation. So this is, for me, the meat and potatoes of what we really wanted to provide you folks today. So again, as I mentioned, I've been chatting with a lot of you as you reach out to us and ask about the program and whatnot. A lot of people say, I don't even know where to start. It's so new to me. And listen, we understand that. This is new to our province, to a lot of our contractors and whatnot. So again, we're here to help you along the way. So in that stream, we wanted to give you just, I guess, a quick rundown of some considerations you may want to think about when you're getting ready to move ahead with the electric vehicle or the electric vehicle charger installation. So access control. Are you going to make your EV charger at your site guest only? Is it going to be open to the public, or is it going to be a mix? All those are, fair game at the end of the day. Generally, I find most folks they want to make sure that the chargers are available for the guests when they're there. But if they don't have any guests that is scheduled to be there that evening or that day, they're very eager to open it up to anyone who wants to use it and whatnot. And I'll chat about that a little bit later. So really, at the end of the day, I've been reading a lot of EV traveler threads, we'll call it. These are social media threads, and just I was trying to get a sense of the state of the market and what they're saying. And I will say that one of the biggest we'll say complaints or disappointments from guest experience perspective is when they've placed a booking at a lodging establishment and they get there and there's someone else using the charger, or it's out of order. So one of the things to consider is how you control access to that charger to make sure it's there for your guests who are planning on using it and booked your establishment just for that reason, or visiting your establishment just for that reason. So some suggestions are just simply placing a sign indicating for guests only. Or if you want to make it available to the public, is just say, have a sign, intended for guests, or inquire at front desk before using. It's something as simple as that. Most people are very respectful of those signs, especially EV drivers. It's a very tight community, and they kind of all try to keep themselves in check. Also, there's chargers as well that you can use an RFID tag or a QR code. The RFID tag might be something that they check in at front desk, and when they get their key or their scan card, they also get an RFID tag for the charger, and they just go back to their car and they just tap the charger and starts charging. QR codes are great for, you can basically, in their confirmation email, you can provide either a password or some other credentials, and when they drive up to the EV charger, there'll be a QR code. If you haven't seen them, it's like a square barcode with all these black and white dots, and basically they just hold their phone up to that barcode, for lack of a better word, and it automatically brings them to this portal where it'll prompt them to please enter your password, and that can start the password. They use the password you sent them in their confirmation email, and they'll use that to start the charging session. Also, there's the option of just activate it at the front desk upon check-in, activating the charger. So when the guests, upon checking in, now this can be done through a web portal on just any computer with internet access, and actually it can be done on a tablet or your phone. It just, as long as it has internet access, you can go into your administrator portal and just activate that charger when they check in. So you don't have to, you're not doing anything. There's no RFID tags or whatnot. And some I've even heard just have an actual power switch that, once they want to allow either a guest or a member from the public to use their charger, they just, somewhere near their front desk, they have a switch that they flick, and that powers up the charger. So at the end of the day, just leave you with the impression that there's lots of options, and it all depends on what suits your establishment and your processes and whatnot. The other one is, are you going to offer charging for free, or is it going to be paid charging? So the majority of lodging establishments at this time offer EV charging for free, essentially as an amenity to attract more guests. And just to give you some context, is you're probably wondering, well, how much does it cost for someone that pulls up and, I'm basically charging their electric vehicle up to 100% by the next day? It works out to approximately $7 with your electricity rates currently. It works out to approximately $7 in electricity for a guest that drives in with quite a low state of charge electric vehicle and charges to 100% before they leave. I'll let you folks decide how that impacts you, relatively speaking. I've heard from other operators that they say, look, if that gets an extra incremental guest stay, that's worth the money as opposed to having a room empty. Again, I would imagine that applies to off-season times. And then also, I've heard operators say, it's guests really appreciate it, and it attracts guests that, at least at the moment, a lot of the EV drivers, especially the ones that are traveling, seem to have we'll say higher income brackets and have more disposable income. So you're attracting someone to your establishment that's has more disposable income, which you can also be obviously an advantage to your site depending on what you're doing. If it is desired to collect money for someone to use the chargers, just be aware that there's chargers out there that they can handle the whole transaction. So it basically handles between the charger provider and the user of the electric EV, the EV charger on your site. Many of them do charge a transaction fee. Let's say a percentage of whatever the total transaction is for them to charge. And Sometimes also they require, we'll say, a more premium cloud plan or network connectivity plan at a monthly or annual cost. So again, it just goes back to, you know, what makes sense for your establishment. So power sharing charger arrangements. So there's a lot of chargers out there now, which is great to see, that they have the ability to, you can install multiple chargers on one circuit. So essentially, if you added up the power that all those chargers draw at once, if they were allowed to draw their maximum power, they would exceed the capacity of the circuit, the electrical circuit that they're installed on. So it, you know, it's a head scratcher. You know, well, why are they allowed to do that? It seems like it'd be against code. Well, what these chargers have is they have the intelligence to dynamically share power. They know how the capacity of the circuit that they're installed on, and they will basically communicate with each other to ensure that they're only providing the amount of power to add it up together that does not exceed the capacity of the circuit. One of the drawbacks to that is that now that's a great opportunity that is in certain circumstances, like I can see condominiums, you know, multi-unit residential buildings, basically residential. I can see that being a real benefit for residential sector, is that it decreases the rate of charge. It's how fast that charger, it's basically, it can get down to as little of as a trickle charge if all the chargers are being used at once. So it's for that reason that we just kind of make people aware that, you know, if someone's coming in with an electric vehicle at quite a low state of charge, they may not be fully charged by the morning if they're power sharing all of them. So it's something to be aware of. I would, for especially lodging operations, that you may want to consider whether you install them in a power sharing arrangement or not. Not to say you can't do it. It may let you put more in than you would have otherwise been able to, but there's other approaches that you may that may be more beneficial to you that I'll go into on the next slide. So another consideration naturally is how many chargers are you going to install? I typically say starting at 2 chargers is a good goal to start with as a minimum. You know, naturally, if you can install more and you can handle that, by all means, but your minimum and your maximum will likely be determined by how much capacity you have in your main electrical service panel, and also your budget. On that topic though, and we hear this a lot, that folks will say that, you know, well, how can people install chargers? Their panels are maxed out or whatnot. Without getting too far into the weeds, it is interesting the way electrical panels are somewhat laid out, is that, you know, you can have a full panel. So you've got breakers it's using every empty spot on your panel. However, what happens is, for the total capacity of the electrical power coming into your site and for that panel, you rarely ever get up to even close to 80% of the total capacity of that panel. When you think about the summertime, you know, your peak for the year is likely in the wintertime, when you're using a lot of electric heat to heat your facility and whatnot, and hot water. So, you know, you're busiest during the summer, but your panel's not really fully loaded until, you know, likely the winter when you're using electric heat. There's technology now that some vendors are working on it, some have it. Is what they can do is they can tie in, they have the intelligence to sense where your panel's at capacity wise, and adjust the power to the chargers accordingly. Now, this is different than the power sharing arrangement I mentioned before, because what it does is that when it senses that, you know, your panel's nowhere close to being fully loaded, which I'm comfortable saying is likely the majority of the time, if not the entire time of your operation, that it will actually allow you to install more chargers on that panel, or more capacity of chargers on that panel. Essentially, you're overloading, in theory, that panel by the nameplate load of those chargers than you'd typically be able to do if it was just a regular device or circuit. This is also, the electrical inspectors are aware of these devices, and they have no issues with them. They're approved. by code and certified by the safety certification establishments. So again, it gets a little bit more complicated in that one, but at the same time, it's probably something that is going to be important for you folks to have in the back of your mind as you get more aggressive with electrifying your parking lots and whatnot. So again, these slides in particular are quite wordy. It's broke the cardinal rule of PowerPoint here, but I really wanted to make this a presentation that you can go back to and use as reference and whatnot. Another consideration as well is network connectivity. And essentially, at the moment, the funding programs available to help you with installing charging programs require the charger to be to have network connectivity to be eligible. At the end of the day, it's the funding program requires it, but it requires it for a good reason. Is because at the end of the day, you'll find that it's quite a benefit to have network connectivity to the chargers. And what that means is that you can essentially remotely interrogate what the chargers are doing. So through a web portal, you just can go on a computer or a phone and you can say, yep, that charger is fine, it's working. You can run reports. This is the amount of power that has gone to EV charging at my site. And also what we mentioned before is that you can also use that to activate disable chargers if you're controlling access to them and whatnot. There's a lot of different types of connectivity. At the end of the day, there's wired solutions. That's like Ethernet, what some computers use for internet to get there. Power line communication, RS protocols, et cetera, et cetera. And then the wired solutions are naturally the most reliable, but also you can get good reliability out of ones that offer cellular connectivity and Wi-Fi. A lot of them offer Wi-Fi connectivity too. And again, you just have to pay special care to making sure that you're not just buying a Wi-Fi charger, someone's installing it, and that's their last thought is whether the Wi-Fi is strong enough there or not, because you'll have an installation charger installed there. And when you go to commission it, which the funding program requires that you actually prove that it's successfully connected to the internet, you all of a sudden have these issues if the Wi-Fi signal is not strong enough there or cellular. So just keep that in mind, keep that front of mind that it's not an afterthought once everything's installed. It's something that you probably want to test out the strength of the Wi-Fi or boost the strength of the Wi-Fi at the location if you are going with a charger that uses Wi-Fi. Future proofing, again, just for consideration, is that while an electrician is at installing chargers at your site, there's very little incremental cost typically to just ask your electrician, what would it take to say run a little bit more conduit, like a conduit to install 2 or 4 chargers down the road. Like say you're only installing 2 for now. Ask your electrician, what would it take just to run the conduit now, which is just basically empty metal pipe, that will save you down the road, because then all they have to do down the road is, if you decide to put in more chargers, all they have to do is pull the wire through that empty conduit. And it's an electrician's dream job when conduit's already there and can easily pull it through. And I would hope the quote reflects that. So something to keep in mind. So just getting into the, just cluing up here, but just getting into the actual commercial EV charger rebate program. Now, it is a new program that was launched just of May this year, the commercial EV charger rebate program. The program is administered by us, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, on behalf of Natural Resources Canada, which is Department of Government of Canada. The program aims to support incorporated businesses and organizations in the installation of EV chargers. And important to know is that, that's for, you could be installing any business, any commercial business. We're focusing on the hospitality sector right now, but, that could be for your customers. It could be for the public. It could be for fleet use. It could be for your employees only. So, it's really broad what it's applicable and eligible on under this. It's just, it has to be an incorporated incorporated business or organization. That's probably the more critical eligibility requirement. The funding will cover 50% of the installation costs, which at the end of the day, this is a very generous program. This is federal money that is coming to our province to help our businesses electrify and support electrification and their business. So 50% of the installation cost up to for level 2 chargers, which is the main charger we've been talking about during this presentation, $5,000 per eligible level 2 charger or connector. It distinguishes between charger and connector because you can actually buy chargers that they actually have 2 connectors. So they'll have 2 wires coming out of them with 2 connectors. And so it's essentially one charger, but now that charger qualifies for up to $10,000 because it has 2 chargers that come out of it that can charge simultaneously. There's some chargers that have 2 chargers and only one can charge at a time, depending on whatever. Those are still considered one charger, but if they can both charge simultaneously, then that's considered 2 chargers. So food for thought. We also have the mid-range DC fast chargers, and we have seen in the hospitality sector, some restaurants and breweries are moving ahead and installing some of these mid-range DC fast chargers. They're classified as between 20 kilowatts and 49 kilowatts. They're more expensive. You know, we'll say on the low range, you can probably buy one. And again, this is just the purchase of one, anywhere from 15,000 to, 20,000 or more. And again, it all depends on what you need at your location. Just because it's more expensive doesn't mean they're just charging you more arbitrarily. It's for functionality or reliability that you typically see the higher, more expensive chargers. And again, then the electrical install is also typically more expensive because you're talking about a higher powered unit. So you'll get 50% up to $15,000 for that charger. And if you install a fast charger that is 50 kilowatts or above, we understand that's a very expensive charger. We don't see a lot of interest in that right now, but you can get $50,000, 50% up to a maximum of $50,000 per charger. The most important point I'd like to impress upon you during this is that pre-approval is required. So there's a pre-approval application, and we ask and require you to fill that out and submit it and have us approve it before you make any purchases whatsoever or start any work. So that's the most important thing that you need to remember is that, give us a call, give us an email. Love to chat with you, and we'll help you through the process, but get that pre-approval in. And so you're locked in. The program is open until March 2024 or until the budget is exhausted. We're seeing good uptake in the program. So it's, we'll see, but it's likely going to be budget is exhausted before March 2024, but there's still plenty of runway. But at the same time, I wouldn't wait. If you're interested and you think you can make this happen, get in sooner than later, so you don't end up coming to us when the budget is used up. You can check out our program website. Again, program website has all the details as to what you need. It has the application on it and whatnot. And feel free to email us at the EV Charger Rebate at nlh.nl.ca. That's the email you'll get us at, and we're typically very prompt to reply. For additional information, especially folks who will be like, I don't even know where to start sometimes, especially on chargers and whatnot, there is a Drive Electric Resource Center. It's based in St. John's, but again, they serve the entire province. It's not-for-profit. Essentially, their main mission is just to help educate people about EVs, answer their questions, and support EV adoption in the province. I've listed the details to reach out to Drive Electric. They're especially really good at answering questions you may have about EV chargers. So I very much encourage you to reach out to them and chat. Very wonderful people there. Chat with them and deal with them, work with them a lot. They're just very passionate about the electric vehicle industry. So that's it for me. And by all means, if there's any questions or whatnot, let them fire away.
Thanks, John. That was great, really informative. We do have a question here from Bruce. He says, we only have single phase power at our campground in Pooch Cove. What chargers will work in our area?
So single phase typically still has 240 volt. So those level 2 chargers are 240 volt chargers. So level 2, you're good to go because the single phase is 120 and 240. So basically you would run the equivalent of, it's like running a dryer circuits or a stove outlets circuit to the outside of your cabin or whatever. Now, I say cabin, but I mean like this program's only for commercial operations, so it has to be a commercial, can't be a private residence or anything like that.
Yeah, so I think, John, typically what 40 amps is probably a sweet spot. You can go up to 50.
Yeah.
That'd be very similar to any kind of like, say, serviced campsite. That's
Exactly.
as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Great. Just waiting for a few more questions to roll in, and we'll just encourage anyone who has any, please feel free to drop those in the chat. John, I had a question for you while we're waiting. So you talked about going across the province and seeing different charging options. Can you tell everyone how like your trip might be different if you were staying somewhere where there was a charger versus where there wasn't?
Yeah, and again, I touched on it just very briefly, but it's a good point to expand on, is that, you know, when you're driving an electric vehicle, you really want to you really want to stay at a spot that has EV charging, because I could be staying at a hotel that has a fast charger right beside it, and I'm still going to choose the hotel that has EV charging and whatnot. Also, the experience of driving across, really they're just a pleasure to drive. It's hard to describe. You really have to get in it. That's why they say butts and seats sells EVs, is that, you know, when you drive an EV, you realize how quiet it is, how sturdy it is, especially in a province that's as windy as us, especially driving, you know, through the Isthmus and all that. You know, they have a very low center of gravity, very solid on the road, very quiet, very smooth acceleration. The cruise control is what really wins me over too, is that you're not having, they don't have transmission, so you're not having gears drop as you go up a hill where, you know, it drops a gear and it revs up the engine, trying to hold that speed. It's like if you set it for 100, it almost keeps 100.0 basically, and it's just a pleasure to drive. It's just you feel less drained at the end of it, and again, the fast charging is just getting better as we go. It's getting, you know, hopefully we'll get faster as we go as well.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I know charging for folks is usually it's best when they don't even know what's happening, right? So if you can charge somewhere while you're getting a bite to eat or sleeping at your hotel room, that's always the best kind of charge we can get, and that's great to hear. No more questions in the chat, so we'll leave it open for a couple more minutes just to see if there's any more interest. John, do you want to talk about the list of pre-approved chargers on our website? That might be a good point for folks as well.
Yeah, so on our website, the program website, which we list in one of the final slides there, I'll show you here if it'll let me go up. But essentially, there on the program website, there's a section there, eligible chargers. If you click on that, expand it, it provides a starting point. By no means is it a comprehensive list of all chargers available that meet eligibility for a program, but it's a great starting point. You'll learn about some of them from Drive Electric NL Resource Center, the one that I highlighted there. Again, you know, there's other chargers out there as well. So in talking with your electrician typically has a relationship with a electrical distributor, and they'll also have access to vendor reps. So they'll have vendor reps that are more than willing to talk to you about how their particular charger can suit your business needs and whatnot.
Awesome. Another question from Bruce says that the program says you cover 50% of the installation costs. Does this include the cost of the charger too, or just the installation?
Yeah, so that's the entire kit and caboodle, the whole thing. So the entire purchasing it, installing it, any eligible costs, it's meant to cover 50% up to the maximum shown on that slide of the entire cost to install EV charging at your site.
That's one of the great benefits of this program is, depending on the charger you pick, you can get a fairly cost-effective charger and still have a contribution towards the civil work and the electrical work. So like John mentioned, it's an all-in total project cost, not just the charger cost.
Yeah, and so I'll just finish with so this is offered by NL Hydro because we partnered with we're administering this program on behalf of the federal government. But at the end of the day, just because it's from NL Hydro, it's a province-wide program. So no matter what utility service territory you fall in, you just reach out to us through our program website, and we'll help you out with it.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so maybe I'll pass it back to you, Craig.
Well, thanks very much, guys, for a wonderful presentation, and certainly there's some real interest in this. John, thank you, Grant, and of course our former colleague Elaine is there as well, so it was great to see Elaine this morning. In partnership with the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation, Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador is leading a 3-year project with the support of Natural Resources Canada and the Provincial Department of Environment and Climate Change to increase education and awareness in the sector regarding the effects of climate change and what it will have on the tourism industry, and to assist business owners in identifying risks and developing adaptation measures for their business and regions. The resources provided are a high-level summary of provincial climate projections and key impacts the industry will face over the coming decades because of climate change. To learn more or access these resources, please go to hnl.ca/resources/climate-change. There are 2,700 tourism-related businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly not all of them were here today. If you know of somebody who could benefit, please reach out to them and encourage them to get involved with the supports offered by Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador. We will follow up with the takeaways and the deliverables from today's sessions and look for further sub-sector sessions for additional discussion. Please know you can always reach out to any member of HNL team and they will help you navigate the resources as well. Again, a big thank you for those who joined us today and participated. If you have any other questions, ideas, comments, or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to any team member at HNL. They'd be happy to help you in your business. Thanks again to John, Grant, and Elaine, and I hope you all have a great day.